Exile is supposed to feel like punishment. That's how the lords of Westeros framed it when Jon Snow stood before them in the ruins of King's Landing. A man who had saved the world twice, once from the dead, once from a queen, was judged not as a savior, but as a problem that needed to be removed. The Unsullied demanded justice, the Southern Lords demanded stability, and Jon Snow became the compromise, sent back to the Night's Watch, banished to the Wall, stripped of title, claim, and future. On paper, it was mercy. In truth, it was exile. But the moment Jon rode north, something strange happened. With every mile between him and King's Landing, the weight on his chest began to loosen. The heat of the south faded behind him. Stone cities gave way to forests. The air grew sharper, cleaner. The road became quieter. And without realizing it, Jon Snow was not being sent away from home. He was riding toward it. Castle Black appeared on the horizon exactly as it always had, black stone against endless white. The wall rose behind it, still massive, still ancient, though scarred now by dragon fire and the memory of the Night King's fall. The Night's Watch was a shadow of what it had been. Fewer than 40 brothers remained, old men, broken men, criminals who had outlived their sentences simply because the world forgot them. The order that once defined the edge of civilization had lost its purpose. There was no enemy left to guard against. And standing at the gate was Tormund Giantsbane. The wildling crushed Jon in an embrace that felt more like a declaration than a greeting. Behind him stood Ghost, larger than Jon remembered, silent as ever, red eyes watching with an intelligence that never faded. Jon knelt and pressed his face into Ghost's white fur. No words were needed. They stayed at Castle Black only briefly. There was nothing left there that demanded command. No brothers waiting for orders. No great duty calling him back to a role he had already outgrown. So Jon did something no Lord Commander was ever meant to do. He walked north, beyond the wall, into the true north. The land that had never belonged to crowns or councils, a wilderness stretching beyond maps where survival mattered more than lineage and freedom was measured by choice, not permission. The free folk were rebuilding. Villages destroyed during the long night were rising again. Fires burned where there had once been only ice. Children who had been born south of the wall were now returning to the land their parents had fled generations ago. Jon didn't arrive as a leader. He arrived as a man. He hunted. He helped repair shelters. He taught children how to hold a blade, not for glory, but for survival. He settled disputes when asked, never imposing authority, only offering judgment when it was earned. For the first time in his life, no one expected him to be a symbol. And then the raven came. Jon was sitting by a fire, teaching a young wildling boy how to sharpen a sword properly, when the bird landed nearby. The message was short, official, cold. He was ordered to return to Castle Black. His presence was required. Failure to comply would be considered desertion. Jon read the words once, then again. Around him, life continued. People cooking, children laughing, Ghost lying near the fire, head resting on his paws, watching Jon the way he always had, like he already knew the answer. Tormund sat beside him and took a long drink from his horn. "You going back?" he asked. Jon folded the parchment, held it for a moment, then tossed it into the fire. They watched as the message curled, blackened, and vanished into ash. "No," Jon said quietly, "I'm not." Tormund grinned. "Took you long enough." That was the moment Jon Snow stopped obeying the expectations of the world. King in the North, Lord Commander, Aegon Targaryen, rightful heir, all of it meant nothing here. Among the free folk, Jon was not elevated. He was accepted, and that distinction mattered more than any crown ever had. Within a year, he had taken a partner, a wildling woman, fierce and practical, with scars earned honestly. She never asked about his past. He never offered it. They built a life without ceremony, without vows, without expectations beyond survival and mutual respect. They had children, 3 at first, then more. Jon raised them without titles, without stories of thrones or dragons. He taught them how to read tracks in snow, how to recognize weather patterns, how to respect the land instead of trying to conquer it. Honor, he taught them, was not obedience. It was choosing the right thing when no one was watching. Ghost thrived in the true north. The white direwolf ranged across territories that spanned hundreds of miles. He hunted bears. He mated with she-wolves. And his offspring carried something strange, larger than normal wolves, smarter, touched by something ancient. The free folk left offerings near their dens. They called Ghost the White Shadow, not a god, not a spirit, a reminder. In Jon's 5th year beyond the wall, something changed. While hunting deep in an ancient forest, Jon stumbled upon a grove of weirwood trees so dense their branches formed a ceiling overhead. The air felt heavier there. Time itself seemed to slow, and then he felt it. Not a voice, a presence. Bran. Not entirely Bran anymore, but something that still remembered being his brother. Through images and sensations rather than words, understanding passed between them. Bran showed him scars scattered across the far north, places where the Night King's magic had been strongest, wounds in the land that refused to heal. They were not world-ending threats, but they were wrong. Frozen corruption lingering where it did not belong. You chose well, Bran's presence conveyed. You found peace. Then came the truth. Jon could heal these places. His blood carried both ice and fire, Stark and Targaryen. He was uniquely capable of undoing what the Night King had left behind. The connection faded. Jon stood alone beneath the weirwoods, Ghost appearing silently at his side. He could have ignored it. He could have stayed with his family, lived quietly and let the scars of the world remain unhealed. But Jon Snow had never been able to walk away from something broken. Over the following years, he sought out the cold spots. Some lay deep in caves, others in valleys where nothing grew and sound itself felt wrong. He learned, through trial, through pain, that dragon glass, heated and driven into frozen ground, could neutralize the corruption. The children of the forest helped him. Few remained, but they remembered what they had created and how to undo it. The work was dangerous. Winds that froze flesh in minutes, ice that formed without warning, sounds in the dark that made even Ghost hesitate. But Jon had died once already. Fear no longer ruled him. His children grew. His eldest became a skilled hunter. His daughter showed a gift for healing and learned from the children of the forest. His youngest asked endless questions about a world that was slowly becoming safer because his father refused to ignore what needed fixing. Jon never told them he had been a king. That man died in King's Landing. This man, who woke beside his family, hunted with Ghost, and helped rebuild a free people, was someone else entirely. One morning, years later, Jon crouched in fresh snow studying elk tracks. Ghost stood beside him. His son waited behind with a bow, learning patience. The elk emerged from the trees. Jon readied his spear, crafted from dragon glass and weirwood, a gift from the children of the forest. He did not think about the Iron Throne. He did not wonder who ruled in the south. He did not regret the crowns he had refused. He was exactly where he belonged. The hunt continued. Life continued. And far away, the world turned without him. Jon Snow, the bastard, the king, the exile, had finally found freedom not by escaping duty, but by choosing which duties mattered. He chose family over legacy, healing over ruling, presence over power. The wall no longer defined him. The North did. And for the first time in his life, Jon Snow was not living for prophecy, expectation, or obligation. He was simply living. In the next chapter, we sail west, past the edge of every map ever drawn, to follow Arya Stark into a world Westeros never knew existed. Subscribe to Zaldriz's Iexio, and tell me this: was Jon Snow's exile a punishment or the only ending that ever made sense?